The difference in affection of parents towards their several children is many times unequal and sometimes unworthy, especially in the mother. As Solomon saith, the wise son rejoiceth the father, but an ungracious son shames the mother. So here what he says is that though it would be ideal for parents to love all their children in an equal manner, this is not always the truth. Because though it is unfair for parents to be partial towards their children, oftentimes we see that parents have their favorite children. Maybe sometimes a father would have more affection for the son who looks very much like him, or he would have a special affection for the daughter who looks like his own mother. Sometimes parents tend to have more affection for children who are smart. They might have two children, one is smart, the other is not so smart, so parents sometimes have a partiality for the smarter one. All this we see in our families too. So that is what he says here, the difference of affection of parents towards the several children, it's unequal. And then he also talks about the case of mothers, and he quotes a line from Solomon. Solomon is the wise King Solomon in the Bible, okay? And Solomon has said, a wise son rejoiceth the father, but an ungracious son shames the mother. So fathers usually take pride in their achievements of their sons. When they do something virtuous, when they do something outstanding, fathers are very proud of their sons. But then mothers, but an ungracious son shames the mother. The mother, of course, is happy when the child does something good. But then when the child turns out to be a bad person, when the child turns out to be a wicked person, or he turns out to be a criminal, or he turns out to be some kind of a failure, then the mother takes on the blame more than the father. This again is something very commonly seen in the families. When the child does something great, immediately the father would say, he's my son or she's my daughter, that is why she's doing this. But what happens when the child does something wrong? When the child brings some kind of a humiliation to the family, immediately all the blame is transferred onto the mother's head, and immediately the father says, it's all your fault, it is you who you did not bring him up properly, you did not teach him the right things, or you did not take care of your child properly. That is why now this has been that is why this has happened now. That is why your child has done wrong. So fathers usually take credit for the virtues of the children, but mothers, they take on the shame of when the child does something wrong. And this is often true because mothers, not only does everybody blame mothers for the wrongdoings of the children, the mother herself feels that she is to blame. That she keeps thinking, did I do something wrong? Did I not bring him up properly? So she very willingly takes on the blame when the child does wrong. Then the next sentence, a man shall see where there is a house full of children, one or two of the eldest respected, and the youngest made wantons, but in the midst some that are as it were forgotten, who many times nevertheless prove the best. So this again is a time-tested statement. He says, in big families, in huge families where there are a lot of children. Nowadays such families are rare. Now we all have nuclear families where the parents have just one or at the maximum two children. But earlier that was not the case. There used to be so many children in the family. There used to be 10 and 14 children in the same family. So he's talking about that kind of families. In the case of families where there are many children, 10 and 14 children, what happens is that usually the eldest ones, one or two of the eldest ones, they are given a lot of respect and care, and the youngest ones too are pampered. They are thoroughly spoiled. What he means by wantons are spoiled. They are pampered so much, they're taken care of so much, and they are thoroughly spoiled. Whereas always in such families you have a group of children that's totally forgotten. So in big families where there are many children, what happens is that the older ones or the eldest ones are given a lot of respect and they're taken good care of, and the youngest ones are pampered. They are taken, again they too are taken good care of, and they are oftentimes spoiled because a lot of affection is showered upon them. But there is always a forgotten group, that is the middle ones, the children in the middle who are not the eldest or not the youngest. They are usually forgotten, and Bacon says something that is very true, that these children, the middle ones, the forgotten ones, often prove themselves to be the best of the lot. And why is it so? Because these children, because they are not taken care of, because they are not given privileges, they have to fight their way through life. They have to fight for the love of their parents, they have to fight for the affection of their parents, they have to fight for privileges, they have to fight for sometimes even for food. And so naturally they become more sturdy and more robust, and they are able to withstand challenges in life. And so these middle children, the uncared for, the forgotten children, oftentimes prove themselves to be the best of the whole lot. For the elder ones, life is easier, and the youngest ones are thoroughly spoiled. They become incapable of facing life, whereas the middle ones prove to be the smartest. That's a very interesting observation, but it is very true. And then he goes on to another point which I am sure that all of us will agree with. He says, and let me read the lines first. The illiberality of parents in allowance towards their children is a harmful error, makes them base, acquaints them with shifts, makes them sort with mean company, and makes them surfeit more when they come to plenty. And therefore the proof is best when men keep their authority towards their children, but not their purse. Okay, so here Bacon says something that is very, very commonsensical. He says parents should not be stingy or miserly in the case of giving allowances to their children or giving pocket money to their children. And because when children should be given enough money to spend, because parents might think, why does the child need money? Because I am providing him with whatever he wants. I'm giving him proper food, I'm giving him clothes, I'm buying books for him, I'm giving him pens or pencils or toys or whatever. So why does he need pocket money? But then people have their own use for money. When you are in school, you know that you would need your money for, sometimes you would want to buy a gift for your friend, or sometimes you and your friends, you would plan and you would buy something that you would like to eat, something that your parents may not buy for you, maybe street food which your parents say no. And so all these are little pleasures that you have as a child. And so everybody has some use for money, even if it is a child. And so parents should give enough money for their children to spend. Otherwise, what would happen? He talks about the after effects, the ill effects if parents are too strict with their purse, because it would make the children base, it would acquaint them with shifts, it would make them sort with mean company, it would make the children base in the sense it would prompt their children to indulge in wrong habits. Means it would make them base, means maybe if the parents don't give enough money to the child might start stealing. Without his parents knowing, he might steal money from his mother's purse, he might take money from his father's pocket without the parents knowing. So this would be avoided if you give the child enough money to spend. If your child asks you, I want money and this is what I need it for, you give it to him. Otherwise, this is what the child would do. You can't blame the child if he does this. And it acquaints them with shifts. Shift again means he might play tricks. He might do wicked tricks to get money. And he would also fall into mean company. Mean company, bad friends. So he would try to make money through acquaintance with bad friends. They would lead him to wrongdoings to make quick money. So to avoid all this, the best thing is that parents give enough money for the children to spend. And another thing is that later on, you don't give them anything when they are children, you don't give them any money to spend, you keep everything safe for them to spend later. And what happens later when you give them all the money? They would not know how to spend this money. They would makes them surfeit more, means they would waste all this money. On the other hand, if you give your child money right from the time he is young, he would learn how to use the money. He would know how to save some money for some purpose. He would know how to save money to buy something, maybe something that he wants. So he would know how to deal with money. Otherwise, this is what would happen. So the parent might be thinking that he would spoil the child if he gives him money, but actually this is what happens in truth. Giving the child enough money always helps him. Even in future, it would stand him in good stead. Otherwise, it would lead him to evil. And so he says, proof is best that men keep authority towards their children, but not their purse. The parent can keep his authority on his children. He can be strict towards his children. He can ask his children to, he can make his children obey him. He can monitor the things that his children do. All that is okay. But then he should not be strict with the purse. Okay. So isn't that a point that you agree with? Now, the next point. Men have a foolish manner, both parents and schoolmasters and servants, in creating and breeding an emulation between brothers during childhood, which many times sorteth to discord when they are men and disturbeth families. See, here is another great truth. He says, people have this foolish manner or habit of comparing children, both parents and schoolmasters and servants. So usually you can see here in brackets he uses the words both parents and schoolmasters and servants. So usually we use both to talk about two categories of people. So here I guess he puts parents and schoolmasters in one category, servants in another category. Okay, so parents or teachers and servants, they have this very unhealthy habit of comparing. Emulation is comparing between brothers during childhood. Now you must be all too familiar with this. Parents always keep comparing their children. Either they compare if you have an elder brother who's good at studies and you are not that good, and your parents keep saying, look at your brother, he has got 100 marks and you have got only 10 marks. So that comparison always comes. Or sometimes your parents might compare you with your classmates, compare you with your neighbors' children. So comparing with others, it's not at all a good thing to compare you with one person with anybody else, because we all know that each human being is unique. So there is no point in comparing two people. But then it is most harmful when you compare siblings. Okay, so this kind of an unhealthy comparison between siblings, between brothers, between brother and sister, or between sisters, this would lead to discord. This would lead to unhappiness. And this unhappiness and discord will continue even when they are men. Because oftentimes when you talk to people who have personality disorders, and you find out that when you talk about your childhood, you find out that all their problems started when they were children. And maybe their parents did something when they were children, or somebody did something to them when they were little, and that impact lasts a lifelong. So same thing would happen if you keep comparing your child to the child's sibling, to his brother or sister. And always when you say that, see, you are a good for nothing, your sister is better than you, your brother is better than you, so that would create a kind of an enmity between the two children. It would make one child the enemy of the other. It would make one child jealous of the other child. And as a result, this enmity will continue lifelong, and it would disturb families, it would destroy families. So that is a very true thing, which many of us maybe have experienced in our lives, or maybe we've at least seen this happening in other families. So what a very correct judgment Bacon has made about parents and the way they treat children. Now he talks about the Italians, and he says he has noticed something about the Italians, that Italians don't make any difference between children and nephews and near kinsfolk. That is, Italians look at all the children in their family. Maybe in a joint family there might be nephews and nieces and own children and cousins' children and all that. And so kinsfolk means relatives. So Italians generally don't make a difference between their own children and the other children of the family. And so he says Italians make little difference between children and nephews or near kinsfolks, but so they be of the lump. Lump here means the same family. They care not though they pass not through their own body. So even if it is a child who is not born of your own body, means if it's not your own child, even then the Italians would not make a difference between them. They would consider all the children of the family alike. And so he says that is a very good thing, because nature too is like that. Because sometimes you find that a child, a nephew might look like his uncle. Means a child may not look like his father, but he may look like his father's brother, or the child may look like the father's sister, or the child may look like a father's uncle. So you have come across such cases. So he says nature doesn't make a difference. If it's the same blood, they are all the same. So parents too need not really differentiate between own children and other children of the family. It would be nice for parents to be large-hearted. Then the next point, let parents choose betimes the vocations and courses they mean the children should take, for then they are most flexible, and let them not too much apply themselves to the disposition of the children, as thinking they will take best to that which they have most mind to. It is true that if the affection of or aptness of the children be extraordinary, then it is good not to cross it. But generally the precept is good. Choose the best, custom will make it pleasant and easy. So this second is a very, very, very relevant point in today's world and at all times, I guess. So he says that it is best for parents to choose the vocations of their children. So we often hear about how parents thrust their dreams, unfulfilled dreams, upon their children. A father wanted to become a doctor, he couldn't, so he forces his child to become a doctor. So all that we hear of. So Bacon somehow says that it is better for parents to choose the career for the child, because the children don't really know what is good for them. That is what he says. Because children are flexible, and so when they are little, when they are young, you choose something for them and they will learn to do that. And let them not too much apply themselves to the disposition of the children. So it is better for parents not to give too much of importance to the interest of the children. In disposition, interest or aptitude. So a child may say that he wants to become a painter, but the parents should not take it very seriously. That is what he says. As thinking they will take best to that which they have most mind to, because parents might think that, oh, the child wants to become an artist, maybe he is keen about, so let him become that way, let me just allow him to become an artist. But Bacon says no, unless of course if the aptness or affection be extraordinary, if a child is extraordinarily good at something, then you can allow that child to. Now for example, a child sings very well, is a very good singer, then of course it would be wise for the parent to allow the child to take music classes and become a musician or a singer and take music as his profession. But otherwise, just because a child sings well and he says, I want to become a singer, a parent should not allow that, because a parent should always know that this may not work for the child. So unless the child is immensely talented in a certain field, the parent should always choose the career for the child. And then he uses a Latinism here, a Latin phrase, which I don't dare to read it because I am sure my pronunciation would be wrong. But what it means is this: choose the best, custom will make it pleasant and easy. That is, it is a duty of the parent to choose what is the best for the child, and the child will slowly, through habit, he will get used to it and he will start liking it. So this point, I guess many of you may not agree, because today again, according to today's parenting rules, we would say that we should give importance to the child's interest, the child's aptitude. We should not thrust our dreams upon our child and all that. But Bacon doesn't agree. He's more commonsensical and he says that, I guess he's more practical. He says that the best is for the parents to choose a career for the child, unless of course the child is immensely talented in some particular area. And now the last point, younger brothers. Now this has nothing to do with the earlier point. So that is another specialty of Francis Bacon, because in his essay, as I told you, only there would be a title and then all the other points would be disjointed, but in some way they are all linked to the main topic. So now he says, younger brothers are commonly fortunate, but seldom or never where the elder are disinherited. Now, here he's talking about a practice that was prevalent in the time that he lived in England. There was something called the right of primogeniture. That is, a father would give all his property to the eldest son. So the eldest son inherits all the property, the land and the house and everything, the wealth, everything is inherited by the first son. That was the right of primogeniture. So the right of being the firstborn. Okay. And so what would happen is that in English families, and I guess this was the case in many of the European countries, that the eldest son would inherit all the property and the other children would be left. Now, if this father makes some special allowance, maybe he writes a special will saying that something has to be given to other children, then he will get it. Otherwise, the elder brother must be a very kind-hearted person, a very large-hearted person who would give something to the younger brothers. Otherwise, the younger sons had no right whatsoever on the property of the father. A very unfair kind of a system. And in 1925, the British Parliament actually abolished this right of primogeniture. And I guess all children are now given equal rights on the property of their parents. So that was not the case in the time of Francis Bacon. And so he says, younger brothers are commonly fortunate, but seldom or never where the elder are disinherited. So here what he means to say is that younger children, right from the time they are small, they know that they will not get anything from the family. Because if they have an elder brother, everything will go to the elder brother. And so, as a result, the younger ones would be more hardworking because they know that they have to work hard, they have to earn something for their well-being. Nobody is going to give them anything. And so, that is why younger brothers are commonly fortunate. So, they usually get settled, they learn to stand on their own feet. That is why he calls them fortunate. But sometimes what happens is, if in rare cases the elder son may be a wanton, maybe a wastrel, and so in such cases the father might write in his will that I am not giving anything to my elder son, I am giving everything to the younger son. In such cases what would happen is, so when the elder is disinherited, in such cases what would happen is the younger ones would not be fortunate, means they would also become wastrels like their brothers. Because if you know that there is a lot of wealth waiting for you, you would tend to become lazy. You would tend to become extravagant and you will lose all your money. So that is the idea here. Younger brothers are commonly fortunate, but seldom or never where the elder are disinherited. So that is how he ends the essay. And as in all essays of Francis Bacon, he does not give us an introduction, he does not bother about a conclusion either. He just begins abruptly and ends abruptly. So this is the essay of Parents and Children. And as we read it, don't we feel that we agree to most of the things that he says? Of course, we might have disagreement on a couple of topics, but otherwise, he is a wise man, speaking from experience, his own experience, maybe an experience of people that he saw around him. He was a keen observer of life, and so the things that he says in these essays ring true today, and I'm sure that they would continue to ring true in the coming years too, because he always talks of universal truths, and that is what makes Francis Bacon very special. So hope you enjoyed this essay.